अस्सलाम वालेकुम दोस्तों। आज का हमारा टॉपिक है बायोमैकेनिक्स, काइनेटिक ऑफ लीनियर मोशन एंड फोर्सेस बाय प्रोफेसर गुलाम मुर्सा। Kinetic of linear motion and forces. We will discuss the following topics: attractive and contact forces, external and internal forces, forces and inertia, mass and weight, vector and quantities. Following are the basic concept of kinetic: inertia, mass, forces, weight, pressure, torque, vector quantities, and work. Kinetic. What is this? Kinetic is the study of forces associated with motions. Linear motions is the movement of a body in straight line or along a straight pathway. Linear motion referred to movement in straight line from one point to another. Attractive and contact forces. Attractive, attractive forces are the result of any two masses acting upon each other, like gravitational pull. In the case of Earth's gravitational force, the Earth is acting on the human body. Contact forces can be used to describe other form of forces encountered within human movement, such as frictional force between the foot and the ground when walking. Contact forces can involve both push and pull. External and internal forces. गेम्स के दौरान हमें इन अंदरूनी और बैरूनी तमाम फोर्सेस का सामना करना पड़ता है। ठीक है, इसमें एक्सटर्नल फोर्सेस इंक्लूड ऑल फोर्सेस दैट एग्जिट आउटसाइड द बॉडी, such as the forces on the tennis ball that is exerted by the racket. Internal forces include all those that act inside the body, like the forces occurring in the elbow joint when you hit the ball with the racket. Force and inertia. Force is a push or a pull on an object. An object at rest will stay at rest unless acting upon body and outside force. Inertia is every object's resistance to change its motion. Mass. Mass is the measure of amount of matter in an object. It is measured in kilogram. Weight. Weight is the effect of Earth gravitational force acting on a body. The term body can be used for the human body or any object. Weight is measured in Newton. The force required to accelerate a mass of 1 kg at a rest of 1 meter per square. Weight measured in newtons, mass measured in kilogram, acceleration due to gravity measured in meters per second squared. Acceleration due to gravity 9.1 meter per squared. Force बराबर है mass and inertia. If we want more acceleration, we will need to exert more force. If you walk quickly, you will have to exert more force as compared to walk slowly. Mechanical load on human body. Muscle forces, gravitational force, and bone breaking force all affect the human body differently. Effect of given force depend upon the following situation: डायरेक्शनली भी, ड्यूरेशन के हिसाब से और मैग्नीट्यूड के हवाले से भी. कंप्रेशन और कंप्रेसिव फोर्सेस. Pressing or squeezing force directed axially through a body. For example, pot of lava between the pages of book. Weight of the body act as a compressive force on the bone that support it. Tension or tensile forces. The opposite of compressive force is tensile force or tension. Tensile force is a pulling force that creates tension in the object to which it is applied. For example, when a child sits in a playground swing, the child's weight creates tension in the chain supporting the swing. Other muscle produce tensile force that pull on the attached bone. Shear force. However, shear force acts parallel to a surface. Shear force tend to cause one portion of the object to slide, displace, or shear with respect to another portion of the object. For example, a force acting at the knee joint in a direction parallel to the tibial plateau is a shearing force at the knee. Lever is the best example of shear force. Vector quantities. Force is a vector quantity. It has both magnitude and direction. It can be expressed either mathematically or geographically on paper using straight line like this. Vector is a physical quantity that possesses both magnitude and direction. As a vector quantity, force can be identified as an arrow that has both magnitude, length, and direction. Point 1 and point 2 show its vector and magnitude quantities. Resultant forces. When two forces are acting vertically upward, resultant composition of these two forces can be expressed as the sum of their two parts. The sum principle applies for any number of forces that are acting parallel to each other and in the same direction. Resultant forces. If two forces are acting in opposite direction to each other, the sum of other respective parts upward minus downward will indicate the resultant of the two and the direction in which it is occurs, positive or negative values. Application of the forces. Vertical forces. It acts straight upward. Anterior and posterior forces act posterior. It behave like a brake force when foot hits the ground during forward movement. Medial and lateral forces depend whether it is going on medial or lateral with respect to foot. Ground reaction forces. Now, it is resultant forces which is derived from the above mentioned three forces like medial, laterals, anterior and posterior, and verticals. It acts as specific direction and with a specific magnitude. It can be plotted for injury considerations, speed of running, running shoes, type of contact force, type of foot, and previous injuries often affect all these forces. Pressures. The amount of forces that presses on a certain area is known as pressure. The pressure on the surface will increase if you make the force on an area bigger. Making the area smaller and keeping the force the same also increase the pressure. Pressure in a fluid is defined as the normal force per unit area exerted on a imaginary or real plane surface in a fluid or a gas. फ्रिक्शन फोर्स रगड़ की कुवत ऐसी कुव्वत जब दो मुखालिफ जिस्म आप एक दूसरे रख कर अगर उनको खींचा जाए तो एक कुव्वत पैदा होती है जिसको फ्रिक्शन फोर्स कहा जाता है। फ्रिक्शन फोर्स इज अ प्रोपोर्शनल टू द नॉर्मल contact force and act perpendicular to it. The frictional force just described is dry friction, which is also referred to as a column friction. Other type of friction is fluid friction, which develops between two layers of fluid and occurs when dry surfaces are lubricated. The behavior of fluid friction is complicated, and because fluid friction occurs less frequently in sports, we will limit our discussion to dry frictions. It is referred to as static friction. Static friction is also referred to as a limiting friction. When we describe the maximum amount of friction that develops just before two surfaces begin to slide, when dry friction acts between two surfaces that are moving relative to each other, it is referred to as dynamic friction. Other terms for dynamic friction are also called sliding friction and kinetic friction. Work and power is a vector quantity and linear kinetic forces and motions. Work is the product of forces and amount of displacement in the direction of that forces. It means by which energy is transferred from one object or system to another. Power is the rate of doing work will be done and how much work is done in a specific amount of time. The ability of an athlete to increase the displacement of an object or body part while exerting a force affects performance in many skills. Now, torque is a vector quantity. The turning effect produced by a force is called a torque. The torque produced by a force may also be called a moment of force. Occasionally, this term is simplified further and shortened to movement. One way to think of torque it as an angular or rotatory effect. और तमाम दोस्तों से हमारी गुजारिश है कि अभी तक आप लोगों ने अगर हमारा चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो बराए मेहरबानी इसको जल्द से जल्द सब्सक्राइब करें ताकि हमारा हर आने वाला अगला लेक्चर जो है वो आप तक पहुंचता रहे। और इंशाल्लाह हम नेक्स्ट लेक्चर के अंदर लॉ ऑफ मोशन और न्यूटन्स के 3 कानून जो है वो हम डिस्कस करेंगे। आज तक की लेक्चर और वीडियो के लिए अल्लाह हाफिज़।